Hi guys, it's a miserable day outside, it's pouring with rain, and we've adjusted the table that we used for the Battle of Brunswick. And I'm looking to get a couple of videos in the bank, so we're doing our second video of today, and this will probably go up until 3 weeks' time. And we're doing the Battle of Barrosa in 1811. This took place at the beginning of March, and the French forces under Victor and those of Major General Thomas Graham were in conflict. The British and Spanish forces were looking to relieve the siege of Cadiz, and Victor was looking to prevent that. And the battle opened with Laval's division advancing through the forest, which you can see over there on the far side of the table, while Ruffin's division moved out to attack the British and Spanish forces who were looking to occupy Barrosa Ridge, which we can see. You may be able to see there's a slight ridge line on the table running across there. And no attempt was made by the Spanish to hold their positions in the face of the French advance, and they fell back and took no further part in the battle. So what we see now is Graham starting to move his British forces forward to seek to capture Barrosa Ridge, and has to be able to also see off this flanking attack by the French forces. British victory conditions today will be to capture the ridge and keep this line of communication and this road open to their supply lines. For the French, it's to defeat the British, hold the ridge, and ideally capture the road as well. So that's where we are, and we'll kick this off as normal with rolling for initiative. Hope you enjoyed today's game. Do remember to comment. Please subscribe to the channel if you are interested in watching future videos come up. And always happy to take any comments, feedback on what you think of the quality of the videos, anything I can do to improve them within my power, recognising this is only a hobby effort. And any questions you've got about the rules or the terrain or the figures or anything like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's offering, and we'll get on with turn one. All right, so both sides stood a bit of a risk for their ADCs. The French put artillery assault on their battery in the centre, and they had no re-rolls available for any of their other units, but all brigades went active, and the artillery assault therefore has gone off. For the Allies, for the British, the Light Brigade put infantry assault on itself. And again, no other re-rolls on any other units, but all units have activated. So both sides have got full activation. Both sides have got their special orders off, which is great news. Let's roll for initiative. And it'll be a straight roll off, see who gets best. Both get an 8, and as it's the first turn, we'll roll again. Okay, so the French roll an 8, the Allies only a 2. So the French get initiative. They got to move or charge first. There will be no charges in turn 1. So straight on with French movement. Okay, so here we are at the end of movement in turn 1. The French forces have emerged from the woods. One of the units went at double time and took a casualty for moving fast through the woods, just to try and get the units into a better checkerboard formation for an upcoming assault. In advance, the French skirmisher screens moved ahead and potentially will start exchanging shots with the skirmish screen down here of the Guards Division, which is the 95th Rifles in skirmish formation. Over in the centre, the French main forces have remained unmoving at this stage. You may notice behind some of the French units you've got some glass beads. This is just to remind me of the different morale statuses of the different units. If a French unit is blue, that is a standard infantry unit. If it's got a red counter against it, as this one here has, this is the converged grenadiers of this brigade. That one will count as veterans, and if they have yellow counters, as these two do, you can just see them there at the back of the units, they're second-rate units. So in this brigade, we're using them mainly as support formations as the initial attack goes in. Similarly, for the brigade holding the centre, you've got veteran converged grenadiers, mainly 9, but also 1 or 2 conscript units. For the Allies, it's more straightforward. I haven't needed counters for it. The Guards will count as elite. The British riflemen otherwise count as, let me just check, is it veterans or line? I'll just check that for a second. They all count as line, with the exception of the light battalions who count as veterans. So Guard as elite, light battalions as veterans, and all the other British as line. All right, so the French, as we saw, have moved forward on the left flank. For the Allies, the only 2 units that were released according to the scenario rules this turn are the 2 light battalions. So they've moved closer together. They're not quite yet in mutual supporting range, or they may just be. They've got to be within 3 inches of one another to provide mutual support. But they've started converging, so they can provide that support as and when they do an infantry assault. And they're taking a pretty brave route, moving straight up towards those French guns. Let's see if they can take advantage of the slowly rising fog and the limited visibility that's concealed their approach march. All right, there we go. The end of turn 1. It'll be now firing. And it was French going first. So we'll start with the French skirmishers, and then I'll come back with the French gunfire. Okay, skirmish fire in the centre was pretty ineffective, but the 95th Rifles took advantage of the further range of their rifles over the musket fire from the French skirmishers. The French skirmishers' shots all fell short, but the 95th Rifles had the skirmish line in range, and they rolled a 6 and 2 5s. So they've wiped out one of the bases already of the French skirmisher screen. 95th Rifles proving their mettle. But now the firing gets serious. We'll open fire with the French artillery battery. It does have artillery assault off, and it'll be going against that closest light battalion. This will be at effective range. Let's see what they get. The French roll a 7. They get nothing with their artillery dice, so not a great round of shooting. A 7 at effective range is just 1 casualty against the lights. They'll be pleased with that, and they'll be looking forward to pressing on with their attack. That's the end of firing. There will be no melee, and so that is the end of turn 1. Okay, we're on turn 2. Again, a pretty bad turn for ADCs, only a couple available to either side. The Allies took a risk and went for infantry assault on this 2nd British Brigade with the 28th Gloucesters in. And that has also gone off, so they now have infantry assault off against their front 5 battalions. The French activated all their brigades, but don't have any artillery assault or anything like that because of the limited deployment of ADCs. So everything was active. We rolled for initiative, and the French again have the initiative. Clearly this flank attack is causing surprise to the Allies. All right, let's start with movement and charges. There will be no charges again because nothing is in range. So we'll start with French movement. Okay, for French movement, their French flanking brigade, as you can see, has come out of the woods and is starting to put pressure on its skirmish screen, is now within range of the 95th Rifles. The Guard battalions, there were 2 of them down here in line. They, being elite, they took the opportunity to do a free formation change, and they moved, this battalion moved itself. I need to change that formation. It's done a double formation change. It was in line, it went into column, and I put it back into line again. It can't do that. It should be in column in that position. It moved from line into column and moved forward, and the 2nd Brigade has done the same thing. It's moved itself into column and moved forward. So I'll adjust that formation, get that one right. But that's how the British are starting to respond to this flank attack, looking to move their 2 Guard battalions to try and drive it off. Over in the centre, the light battalions have continued their advance towards the French lines, and the 2nd wave of British attackers has started moving forward in the Gloucester's brigade. On the French, you can see the combined grenadiers have moved out from behind this building. This is only for scenery, this building's purposes, so I've just moved it slightly. It has no real effect on the game. The French have deployed more of their line troops forward to potentially provide some flanking fire on to the light battalions as they move up and keep some pressure on the Allies and move the converged grenadiers into a better reserve, remembering that units can charge through deployed artillery battalions. So they can potentially go through that gap or fill that gap if the British get closer. All right, so that's for movement, and it was French initiative this turn, so French firing will go first. I'll do the skirmisher fire and then come back with the artillery, noting, of course, that the British have now taken advantage of a bit more space in their deployment zone, and they have now deployed their Royal Foot Artillery to start taking some fire onto the French. All right, French firing first. Let's do the skirmishers. Okay, so the French artillery is going to open fire. It's not going to be able to fire at the lights because its own skirmishers are in the way, and it would have to fire shrapnel through the back of its own, canister through the back of its own skirmishers, so it will not do that. It'll fire at this unit down here, the 28th. Let's see how the French artillery does. We're all a 4. That will be nothing, so no effect from the French artillery. All right, the skirmisher screens have all fired. The 95th Rifles being effective again, putting a couple more casualties on the French skirmish screen, nearly knocking another base off. And the various different infantry battalions in the centre have taken fairly heavy casualties, including the lights here, who took 3 casualties from that French skirmisher screen. All right, the British guns will open fire now. They deployed this turn, so these shots will be at -2. And they are going to fire at the French battalion behind the hill next to the guns. I think that's their most closest target that's on the hill and available to them. So first one at -2. They roll an 11, that goes down to a 9. At long range is 1 casualty and a discipline test. In fact, it goes down to an 8, which is simply 1 casualty, no discipline test. And a 10, so 2 remarkable shots. That goes down to a 7. That's a half a casualty. So this long range fire, when you've deployed against a unit in cover, is not very effective. So only 1 casualty against the French battalion up on the hill, despite some excellent firing by the British guys. Right, that's the end of firing, and there will be no hand-to-hand combat. So we'll come back with turn 3. Okay, so we've rolled for ADCs and initiative. The French retain initiative for, I think, the 3rd turn in a row as we now go through into turn 4. What's happened? So the French managed to get infantry assault off on this brigade on the flank, and unfortunately the French brigade in the centre has gone hesitant. For the Allies, all brigades have gone active, and they choose to use their extra ADCs this turn to give the forwards order to the Guards Brigade, which did go off, so they will get their bonus movement. So French to go first. There may be charges, possibly, but I'll come back if there are. Otherwise, we'll be on to movement in turn 4. Okay, so the French advance on this left flank continues into turn 4, really approaching the British lines and starting to get round the flank if the Guards can't hold them off. One of the Guards battalions is deployed in line, and the other one took advantage of its boosted 22-inch movement to move up to provide flank support for its colleague. But we've still kept the rifles skirmish screen in place, as the Guards would suffer from an inferior volley if they were to fire this turn, as they've moved substantially. Otherwise, the light battalions have moved forward in preparation for doing a charge next turn, and the Gloucesters and others have moved up in support. So that's it for Allied movement. We'll now see if the French want to move any of their units in their blocking force. Right, on with firing. Starting with the French, we do have some volley fire this turn. So we got an inferior volley from this conscript battalion, or second line battalion, that has swung round to start providing closer support to the unit behind the hedge and put some pressure on this light battalion. Let's see how they do. An inferior volley and a 9 is 2 casualties and a discipline test against the British. We'll mark that up for the moment. Then the infantry battalion on the hill, which is also a conscript battalion, will fire an inferior volley against the skirmish screen. This will be at -2. They get a 6 and at minus... Why would it be at -2? Because it's a skirmishes is a 4, so they lose fire discipline, and that's it. Okay. Then the French artillery will continue pummeling the same light battalion as it has in previous turns. This will be shrapnel canister rather at close range. That's a 9 at close range, is 3 casualties and a discipline test. Takes this infantry battalion up to 7 casualties. They are veterans. Let's see how they do. They roll a 7. On a 7, you take -1 for the casualties, but +1 for being veterans, so they stand. The skirmishers over here have exchanged fire. No major effect, but we do have a volley from this infantry battalion by the house. These are again conscripts, so this will... sorry, they're second line, they're not conscripts, they're second line. But they did move forward this turn, so this will also be an inferior volley. They roll a 6, which is 1 more casualty against the lights. And I think that's it for French firing this turn. So we'll now do some return firing from the Allies. We fired the skirmishers down here and removed another skirmish base from the attacking French brigade that's moving up in this direction. We fired the skirmishers. We will fire our light battalion. So this would be an inferior volley as they moved forward this turn, and it'll be at -2 given the number of casualties they've taken. That's a 6 for an inferior volley, is 1 casualty against that French battalion that is opposite them. Just put a dice there for a second, and we'll put the casualty marker on shortly. And we can fire the British battalion down here against that French skirmish screen. So that'll be at -2. Reroll a 6, that's a 4, that will be nothing. So that's the infantry firing done. Now let's do the British artillery firing. They will both fire against, we've got 2 batteries. It's either got to be counter battery fire against the French artillery on the hill or against that French battalion behind the ridge. We'll go for the battalion behind the ridge. These are both at long range. We know we need high scores. 5 won't do anything. And an 8. We might get something with an 8. At long range, that's 1 casualty. It's -1 for being behind a hedge. So we need a 4, 5 or 6. We don't get anything, so no effect from the long range British artillery fire this turn. All right, that's it for turn to 4. Let's move on. Things are starting to get tasty as we approach turn 5. Okay, so the French have got initiative in turn 5, but this is, again, a nice example of when the General de Brigade command and control rules kick in. So both sides only got a couple of ADCs, so really not enough ADCs to do everything we want. The French decided to prioritise their defence here in the centre and successfully, even despite not having a re-roll, put artillery assault on their brigade in the centre. And then they took a risk that they could keep the attack going with this brigade in the flank, but unfortunately it went hesitant. For the Allies, the Guards, clearly daunted by the number of French battalions approaching them, also went hesitant this turn. So no further movement for them. But for the Allies, all the other brigades in their attacking formations are active. The French have initiative, as I say, as we move in to the start of turn. I've now lost track. Is it 5 or is it 6? Anyway, it's the start of the next turn. Cheers. So the apparently innocuous realigning of this second-rate French battalion here has now proved devastating in that they realised they had a flank open to this pretty much undamaged British light battalion. So they have charged the British in the flank. That could be a real hammer blow to this British assault in the centre. Otherwise, all the French battalions have started to stay where they are and volley this turn. And unfortunately for the Allies, over on the right here, the British are out of range. They could charge with this heavily damaged veteran battalion in the centre, but they will take fire from both the artillery and the infantry. It's a question of whether we just stand here and exchange gunfire and use our superior marksmanship to try and hold this off or charge in. I think we'll go for it. I think we're just going to get hammered by the artillery with that artillery assault on. So we are going to charge. So the British light battalion will charge against the battalion in front of that small house. That's charges. Let's do defensive fire and charge outcomes. Okay, starting here, so we do get defensive fire support from the artillery battery as they're within 3 inches of the battalion being charged. So this will be a close range shot. Wow, this could be the end of the British. They've rolled an 8 and got 2 extra casualties from their casualty dice. So at close range, an 8 is 3 casualties, so that's 5 more casualties on the British and a discipline test. They've already got 8 casualties, that would take them up to 13. That British battalion has been decimated in a well of canister fire and defensive musketry from that French infantry battalion, and breaks and flees the field. That'll be a fault test for the British. All right, that's defensive fire done. We'll now do the charge from the French in the flank. Okay, so this will be at +2 to the French. They get a +4 bonus for flank attack, but that's reduced because of the British attaching their brigadier to this attack, whereas the French chose to attach their brigadier to the one against the town, and the British being veterans. I won't apply the faltering modifier to this battalion because actually thinking about it, charges should be done in initiative order, so the French charge should have gone first before this other British battalion tried to charge. So although we resolved that one on the right first, we should have done them the other way around. So this will be +2 to the French result. See how we do. Neither side actually have any supports. Wow, that's pretty good for the British. So the 3 goes to a 5. The British have rolled a 10, so it's a -5 result. And very luckily for the British light battalion, the French unable to charge home, and they retire, taking 1 casualty. All right. Great result for the British, really unfortunate for the French there. Again, shows you the value of having supports and the ability to use rerolls. Okay, let's go and do that movement, and that'll be the end of the charges, and we'll be on to normal movement in turn 5. Okay, here we are at the end of turn 5. So the British have fully deployed their Guards battalions. The French, because they were hesitant, have remained outside outside musketry range, but they are within charge range, and indeed they moved their skirmishers back to make sure that they were out of fire range for the British Guards. Over on the other flank, the skirmishers from the British have continued to fire pot shots against that French battalion behind the hedge, and the gunners themselves had obviously already fired to try and repel the British attack and succeeded in doing that from the lights. The 2nd British Brigade has now moved up into the front line, ready to charge next turn hopefully, and the French have fired various different volleys at them and indeed unformed one of their battalions, but otherwise the firing was reasonably ineffective. Critical turn now, turn 6, we're going to see a whole bunch of charges I think in this turn as the British try and break through in the centre and the French try and put pressure on this Guards Brigade on the Allied left flank. Let's see how we do, see who gets initiative as we do turn 6. Okay, at the start of turn 6, all brigades are active and we have a falter test to do for the British Light Battalion, so fairly critical one if there's not going to be an enormous hole opened up in the British formation. They roll a 5, that's pretty good. This is a veteran battalion, so on 5 they obey orders, so they carry on attacking. So that's good news, everything active on both sides. Let's see how we do for initiative. Straight roll off this turn. Can the Allies get initiative? It's a 5 versus a 5. So unfortunately, as the French had initiative last turn, they retain it. French charges at the start of turn 6. Right, as we predicted, charges going off everywhere. 3 French battalions charging the Guards on the far left. 2 more French battalions attacking the 2nd Guards Battalion on the right of this brigade. Over on the hill, the light battalion that survived the falter test and has obeyed orders has finally done its charge, both against the cannons and that infantry battalion behind the hedge line. These 2 battalions who were newly brought up, the 28th Gloucesters, and I think that's the Royal Scots next to them, have charged in against their French battalions. So we'll have loads of defensive fire to do. We'll start with the Guards. Okay, so this will be a superior volley with 2 combat dice because we're firing against columns at close range, and this is a large battalion. Wow, that's going to be good. That's a 10. So a superior volley on a 10 is 5 casualties on those attacking French and a discipline test. Let's see how they survive against the discipline test. So no battalions will be on negative modifiers yet. So first one is okay, and the second one is okay. So they remain formed, but that'll be a big penalty to the charge results. Okay, so the raw result is pretty good for the British in that they're on a +3 modifier, but they have no rerolls and the French have 2. This could swing it for the French. Let's see how we do. The combined Grenadiers are going in against the British Guards. The British roll a 6, the French roll an 11. So the 6 becomes a 9, so the French have won by 2. So with a victory with 2, they will melee with Elan, and the Guards will melee unformed. Given the French have rolled an 11 already, they won't go any for any rerolls, so that looks like a vicious combat breaking out later in the turn. Alright, let's do the defensive fire from the 2nd Guards Battalion, see if they can do as well. Well, they roll an 8, that's still pretty good on a superior volley. Superior volley on an 8 is 3 casualties in a discipline test, and they've got 2 more casualties from the combat dice. So that's 5 casualties and a discipline test against those French battalions. Let's do the attacking battalion. It passes, and the 2nd battalion will also pass. So I'll mark up the 5 casualties, and we'll then do the charge results. Slightly better for the British in this combat. They French only have 1 reroll, and they are on the Allies are on +4, because this time the attacking battalion isn't a veteran and has already taken 4 casualties. Oh, I rolled 5 dice. That's not good. Let's roll them again. Right, so the Allies have rolled a 4, that becomes an 8. French have rolled a 4, so an 8 plays a 4, so that's a -4 result. The attacker retires with 1 casualty. So this part of the French attack has been thrown back. All right, now we'll do the defensive fire by the French. First, the battalion behind the hill. This will be an inferior volley as they've now taken 4 battalions and they are reservists, so they will now qualify as conscripts. That will be no effect. And then we'll fire the artillery battery at close range. A 4! This looks like it's good for the lights this time. So at close range, a 4 is only half a casualty. Let's see if this comes through. It doesn't. So no casualties against the Allies. Let's do the charge results as this veteran battalion charges home against the French. Okay, so this charge results will be at +2 for the Allies. No one has any supports because yes, the artillery have a support from the combined grenadiers to their rear, so the French will get 1 reroll. The Allies roll a 4. French will not take their reroll. They've rolled a 9. That goes down to a 7, so the Allies have lost. It's a -3. So the Ally light battalion is thrown back and takes 1 casualty. The French hold on this part of their line. I admitted the fact that those French guns had artillery assault on. I've only just seen now. I've pulled the unit back that was charging it, so that caused a couple of extra casualties on the light. So I've just added those, given that they were thrown back anyway. All right, now we've got another defensive volley from this battalion in the centre. They are a regular battalion at the moment in terms of their status. They roll a 7. For a standard volley is 2 casualties against the attacking Allies. And not a discipline test. So now let's roll the charge results as that British battalion tries to go in. So the Allies are line troops, the French are line troops, so there's no morale difference there. The British will apply their brigadier to their battalion fighting the veterans, so there's no brigadier to apply. They took 2 casualties as they charged in, so that'll be minus 1 on the Allied result. That's straightforward roll off then. Let's see how we do. The Allies roll a 6, the French roll a 6, so that's a -1. So the British stop and do a volley. They're a standard sized battalion, so this will be 3 dice, needing a 4, 5 or 6. They don't cause any casualties, they simply stop in front of the French line and let off a ragged volley. I'll mark up those casualties and then we'll do the final charge for the turn. Okay, let's do the French defensive volley. This is a superior volley as this is a veteran battalion. They roll a 6 on a superior volley, is 2 casualties, so that'll be a -1 modifier on the British, and otherwise it's a straight charge off, the veteran status of the French being offset by the British colonel being attached. This time the British do better. They roll a 10. The French do get a reroll from their supporting battalion to their left. Okay, so that goes up to a 6. So the British win by 4. That's reduced by 3 to 3. So they take the ground and the French battalion retreats with the 3 casualties. It takes 2 casualties, let's see, and the brigadier wasn't attached, so there's no effect on the British brigadier. So 2 more casualties on the French, and the British have broken that part of the French line. Okay, so we've just worked out the modifiers for this. This is still quite a tough ask for the French. Their attacking grenadier battalion is veteran, but the British are elite, and the British are a large battalion. So the British still do have a slight advantage here, even though they're unformed, and the combined grenadiers have a LAN. So the French do 3 casualties, and the Guards do 5. So the Guards have won this combat, and the French will be thrown back. So at the end of turn 6, fighting's pretty confused. The British Guards did manage to throw back the attacking French columns, but they're still somewhat threatened here, being unformed and having French columns in close proximity, but they will have to take a falter test. In the centre, the British have broken through part of the French line, but part of the British attack has been thrown back. So still all to play for as we move on to turn 8 with some falter tests for the French this time. All right, so without needing their reroll, the French have gone active and have obeyed orders on this flank, so they'll be able to resume their attack against the British Guards. In the centre, the British are active and have artillery assault off on their main artillery batteries, but the 2 British left-hand brigades are both hesitant. So French to go first. There'll be some charges as they try and push forward their advantage on this left flank in turn 7. Okay, in turn 7, the French charged in against the unformed British Guard, but the British did a tremendous volley and caused the attacking French column to fail its discipline test, go unformed, and be unable to charge home. The French skirmisher screen over here has caused some casualties on the British Guard battalion, and the other French infantry that has pushed back in previous turns is starting to move forward. The British Guard down here, I forgot to mention, rolled a double 6 on their volley, so they caused it an event test. It's not a falter test, is it? Destiny test on the French, and unfortunately the French lost their commander, so they will have to take a falter test this turn once again as a result of that fire from the Guards battalions. Over here, we continue to fire away at the French battalion behind the hedge. They've taken 6 casualties now, but the devastating fire was from the French this turn in the centre. The French artillery and that infantry battalion have now put no less than 10 casualties on the attacking 28th Gloucesters, so they look like they're at the point of going. Over here, the British battalion that's made a breakthrough wheeled and let loose a volley against the combined grenadiers, caused 3 casualties against them, so they're starting to suffer a bit and also went unformed. And down here, a combination of fire from the Essex in the valley and the British artillery batteries in the rear have taken this French battalion on the hill up to 8 casualties. So quite a lot of units at quite a precarious position. I think the game's nearly over, but I'm still not quite sure which way it's going to go. All right, that's it for the end of turn 7. Let's see how we do. Turn 8, which will include a Falter test on the French left. This could be the decisive moment. The French only have 1 ADC. The Allies had 2. They managed to get artillery assault off on their infantry batteries, and all their brigades are active. The French only have 1 go. And they get a 2. That's a terrible result. This left-hand brigade is now going to be in real trouble. On a 2, they have to retire, so they will count as hesitant. All units will retire. Everyone loses a casualty. Skirmish line loses 1 full base. All right, so the French attack on this flank is in trouble. On the right flank, it's sort of all or nothing. The Essex have charged this French infantry battalion on the hill. They're both very damaged. And the Royal Scots have charged the combined grenadiers, see if they can crack this French position. Let's see how they do. Defensive fire first. This will be at -2 from this French battalion on the hill. They roll a 5, that's the 3. They lose fire discipline. That will be no effect. Let's roll the result. The French are on 8 casualties and are conscripts. So their allies are 1 morale grade better, but both of them are on -2 for casualties. Neither of them have their commander attached. So it's simply a +1 roll to the British. Let's see how we do. British roll a 6, French roll a 10. So the British will go up to 7, that's a -3. So the British will take a casualty and retire. Does not look like this part of the assault is going to achieve anything in this game. Okay, on the second charge, the French caused 1 casualty as the British charged home. This will simply also be at +1 to the British. Again, another good result for the French. Looks like the French might hold on in their defence here. So that becomes a 5 versus a 4. That's a -1. Okay, so the British don't fall back, but they do let off a volley. So that'll be 3 dice from the British battalion. They cause 1 more casualty on the combined grenadiers. All right, here we are at the end of turn 8, still all in the balance. The British Guards are in good shape. They haven't taken many casualties, and they've successfully driven off 2 French attacks from this flank, and this French brigade is still faltering. In the centre, it doesn't look so good for the Allies. The light brigade is at half strength. The remaining units are quite a healthy position, but the other brigade is in pretty dire states. These 2 battalions near the baseline have both taken 10 or 11 casualties and are on the point of collapse. The 1 remaining battalion is doing well against the combined grenadiers, but hasn't broken them. Up on the ridge, the French position is still intact. That battalion in front of the house, the artillery battery, and the other battalion are reasonably healthy. But the battalion that was on the hill here, you can see, has now finally succumbed, although it drove off the attack by the British battalion down here. Long-range artillery fire from the British artillery finally tipped it over the edge, and it fled the battlefield. So there's a Falter test on both French brigades this turn. So although the French brigade position looks pretty solid, a lot of units still on the table, they do have 2 Falter tests. And we'll see where they can come up with the ADCs to keep their formations intact, or they've just reached the point of disintegration. Okay, critical ADCs as we roll for turn 9. As we've got 2 Falter tests, we'll do these ones on camera. Let's see how we do. Disaster for the French. They've lost one of their brigades. They've only got 1 ADC, which means they're going to have to let 1 of their brigades go. For the Allies, they've also only got 1 ADC, but they don't have any Falter tests. Let's roll this Falter. We'll do it on the brigade holding the hill. I think that's the only one. That's the one that we need for our victory conditions. And we roll a 1. Savoir qui peut. So the French brigade on the hill has finally had enough. That attack on the flank into the converged grenadiers, they're worried it's going to undermine their whole position. They're outflanked. And they've lost the confidence they can hold the ridge against the Guards and the light battalion that are again pushing up towards them. Time to limber up the guns and withdraw, so the French pull back from that position. Over here, This brigade still relatively healthy, but it's taken reasonable casualties in a couple of the battalions, but certainly wasn't able to break the British Guards down here. So again, they, with no ADC to allocate, have to continue retreating off the table. So I think we'll call it at that point. We've got all French forces in full retreat. The British have succeeded. The French ambush has failed. And Hill, wasn't it? Graham is successful in this battle. Real seesaw battle. I hope you've enjoyed this one. This has been great fun. I really did not know which way this one was going to end up. So it's been a great one to play. Could have gone either way. The British really only have, 4 intact battalions. They've lost nearly half, or just over half their force in terms of effective battalions. And that French position on the hill proved really hard to crack. Really only has gone with a couple of unlucky dice rolls. All right. Cheers, everyone. See you again next time. Hope you enjoyed the game, and I'll be seeing you all soon. Thanks a lot. Please comment and let us know what you think. Bye.